What is up, all you GBA D-League type people? This is Tom. We're here, bringing you guys week 2 of the power rankings. And with me as always, I don't say your name.
What is going on, guys? Yeah, we had a little bit of confusion last week with that. But anyway, Aster here. And we got a lot of fluctuation this week. We got a lot of people moving up and down. So it should be very interesting.
Yeah, there is going to be a little bit of agreement on the bottom and the top of our rankings. But in the middle, there is going to be a little bit of dissension, a little discussion, a little bit of going into. Kind of hard because there was a little bit of disappointing matches this week. But we're going to start off with your perennial bottom dweller, the New York Empoleon.
Yeah, so starting off on Goldoa Dragon, New York Empoleon. We have him taking on the Calgary Infernapes this week. From his commentary early on, I felt like he was a lot more confident. The DC not happening, of course, this week probably helped a lot. He did leave a lot of things up to chance in the game. Things like poison on the Hydreigon from his Venusaur, Teeny potentially outspeeding Thundy when it never should, Drill killing Mega Kangaskhan from where it was at without really running the calc, finding out how bulky it was earlier on in the game. So a lot of things that I was kind of feeling shaky about. Obviously, I said he seems a little more confident. He did play a little bit better. It was a very close game. He said it himself. He felt better himself about this game. But no offense to Aaron, but we do have the Calgary Infernapes a little bit lower on our list. Not one of our top-ranked teams. So I'd like to see Goldoa come out strong against somebody that we have higher up. I know that he takes on Randy next week, so that should be interesting. And we still want to see a lot more from him.
Yeah, like you said, there are little things that he can definitely patch up or continue to patch up. I feel like him not changing up moves to KO Hariyama with the Venusaur, and especially when Hariyama came in, he thought clicking Toxic was a good idea. I mean, Hariyama, unless it runs like Aerial Ace or Zen Headbutt, which I don't even think it learns, right? It wasn't going to knock out Mega Venusaur from where it was at. And, you know, the sub may not necessarily been extremely likely. There still was probably the better idea to just click, you know, Giga Drain or Sludge Bomb, get off big damage, and try and whittle down Hariyama, see what item it's running potentially, than to just try and Toxic it outright. And of course, lost a lot of momentum once it got up behind a sub. Then there was sort of the thing that he could have gotten up rocks with Bisharp to, you know, whittle down, and this kind of was important in the end game because the rocks could have potentially gotten him a KO with Exeter against the Mega Kangaskhan. Yeah. That little bit of damage, that entry damage from the Stealth Rock could have been the difference between dead Kangaskhan and Drill possibly doing something, and it, you know, him losing the way that he did. So while he's not playing terribly, he just needs to continue to fix things in order to get better, because his overall thought, his skill, the processes that he goes through during the match are still a bit suspect. Next up, our number 11, which we have kind of unified on, we have the Toronto Leaf Storms, coached by OP Jellison. I will give him props from the get-go. He did a very good job early managing the webs from Turbo's Masquerain with his Defog Landorus Eye. A complete sentence I never thought I'd ever say. Wow. And especially predicting Mega Arrow to come in against the Nidoking, or when he was facing Nidoking, and he clicked Stone Edge with Lando instead of clicking the Earth Power or Earthquake. So that was good on his end. I definitely think that he is improving. He did play very well, but Turbo just played better. And of course had better sets that of course took advantage of what he expected, or what Turbo expected on Jellison's team. He didn't quite make the big boy Kyurem play double that he was talking about in his commentary that he said would have won the game. There is a little bit of dissension amongst Aster and I, basically disagreeing that that could have been what won in the game. Like, there's possibilities, I understand that, but when you're trying to bypass an Iron Head flinch from the Serene Grace Master itself, you're playing with fire, dude. And, you know, not to mention the fact that the grassy terrain really did work against his overall Kyurem Subsalic set idea. He was mostly in an impossible situation late game with Turbo, was very much so at the mercy of his offense, and kind of suffered for it. Turbo played better, got the W.
Yeah, I agree with you completely on the fact that he made a very good play early on. It's very rare that you see people actually predicting with their lead ground types and going for the super effective move on the switch-in. Sohan was able to this week, and I think the big part that really got to me about this game was scouting for Sap Sipper with his Virizion when Azumarill was in. That one was that was questionable at best. Like, just switch into something that can damage it, and if it happens to not be Sap Sipper, you can come in with your Virizion again and then Leaf Blade it the next time. There were so many other plays that Turbo could have made. He could have gone into Rachi. It was obviously a Scarf-locked Virizion. He could have gone Rachi and U-turned. He could have gone into Bulu and subbed. There were a lot of options for him, but he chose to go into Azumarill specifically because it was a counter to the Virizion, which was likely to come this game. So I don't agree with clicking Leaf Blade on the turn that he did. That was a very, very big one for me. On top of that, Manaphy wasn't able to KO the Azumarill from where it was. So a lot of really small things that really, well, that one specifically was pretty big, but small things in the game that really set him back. Early on started really strong and then kind of just degenerated from there. I'd like to see him continue playing the way that he did this week, though. I think that as long as he's able to make the right play at the right time, I think he's going to start excelling and start doing a little bit better. But because of the 2 losses, obviously, we have him down at number 11. So, moving on into my number 10, your number 10 as well. We have, once again, a big dive for Greg. Well, not huge. He only moves down 1 spot, but the fact that he's at number 10 really says a lot, considering how high we had him up early on.
Yeah, he's a basement dweller now, if you ask me.
Yeah, for sure. He's down at the bottom with the other 2, but Greg this week really didn't show me anything of what I know Greg for. I know Greg very well. Once again, he lost to not clicking the right moves at the right times. I've been victim of that many times, many turns, and Greg experienced the same thing this game, clicking Belly Drum with the Quilladin and having Zapdos come in. There was the other turn where he didn't click counter on the Garchomp with his Lycanroc Knight and instead decided to get up Rocks, or I think Taunt actually, and he ended up being faster than the Garchomp, which I was surprised about. I thought a Dragon Tail was coming out that turn, but he did end up being faster than the Chomp, which was quite interesting. That should have indicated to him that the Chomp was super, super bulky and that it was going to make it very difficult for Scizor to sweep in the end game without getting extra chip damage on it. I think counter would have put him in a great position to win the game. Late, as we saw, the Bug Bite took out the Blissey, but it's just... It was really poorly executed for me. I think that Greg can do a lot better. Obviously, taking on one of the strongest players that we have in the league is always difficult, but very, very interesting plays, to say the least.
Yeah, but it's a bit more than that. See, unlike what OP Jellison didn't do in Week 1, where guess he sort of did, where he tried to show the counter, to see if it would work. That's what Greg didn't do. He was afraid to click the button, and he suffered for it. That would have, in all likelihood, just blown back the Garchomp with the counter from that Lycanroc turbo form. The bottom line is this, all right? And this is one of the people I'm going to start going into if he assumes to keep playing the way that he does. I seriously question anything that Greg did this match. I don't care if you wanted to save your good sets for playoffs. You're not getting the playoffs if you play like shit. That's the bottom line, right? He didn't look like he took this match seriously. He brought memes and gimmicks that sort of worked or didn't work at all. The Quilladin didn't work. Lycanroc Knight didn't work. When you see those two at team preview, and then you have wonky-ass sets on them, of course you're going to get beaten. You padded Zazo 2 Mons from the get-go and basically allowed him to just, outclass, outbulk, and just beat you. So, here's the thing. If he's going to play like this, and he's already played bad Week 1, where he let Melon just win because Mox showed him something that obviously, didn't happen, and he wants to say that he's a legit contender like you think he is, and many of the people think that he is, show it. Come on, dude. The hype was there from the get-go. We liked your draft, but it seems like you either got to show it or not, because now it's turning into more of a welcome to the basement, you're a fraud, than, hey, we have a lot of hopes for you, you're going to do really well. You're not, though, so. I
mean, I still have high hopes. He did make that really good prediction on the Zapdos Earthquaking with the Gliscor, so I don't know. Yeah. I still see potential. Greg just has to bring it out.
But you're also biased and see Greg as your friend. I see him as just a competitor who's just kind of lackluster at this point.
No, I see him as a competitor as well.
I think he needs to play better. Now, another team that I'm going to go into, because this is Tom goes into rant time, right? We have my number 9, your number 8, the Calgary Flame Wheels, coached by Deeb's Weeb's boy himself. He said it himself. I am going to roast him. Well, get your burners ready, because here we go. You look at Deeb's offense, all right, and you look at how he brought his Neoligo set. Do you think that maybe a subset or just a 4-attack Life Orb set would have been a little bit better based on Neoligo's speed tier, its viability to cover 4 different moves, but he didn't have any coverage for the Steelix, right? each time it came in, I'm not kidding when I say this, it sucked away the momentum entirely from his offense, right? He couldn't do anything with that Neoliga when the Steelix came in. And it pretty much showed, right? Once that Steelix was down, Neoliga was good, but just not a Scarf variant, honestly. Not only that, but then the vast majority of his offense after that, being the Lando, the Zard, and the Feeney, all lost because he played himself. He should have defogged with Feeney in order to ensure that Glycopod as well as Zard didn't come into massive rocks damage. His team needed that type of support, but instead chose to attack with the Feeney. He also could have checked his DS, I think, to see what Sylvali type it was, or at least
I was going to say that, yeah.
Right? Like, he could have taken that second just to kind of reel back and go, okay, what is this? Rather than just assuming it was flying when in reality it was water. The bottom line, it's stupid things that he does that just suck away his stance in the matchup. If he is not going to check how emergency exit works with hazards and, kind of seeing what Glycopod does in terms of how it takes damage, when it activates, when it doesn't, drop the fucking Mon, dude. Like, there's...
Yeah.
You can't sit here and say, I don't know how this works, when you then use it in match and it basically, baffles you as much as you thought you knew what you were doing. You played like slop, you deserve the L, and you're unimpressive now for a second week after barely escaping a win against someone who is now better than you, that you beat in a matchup you should have won higher.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for your rant, Tom. For me, the big thing is Nihilego shouldn't have come to this game. There were great checks to it, including Steelix. Steelix on its own just shuts it down. If you're going to bring Nihilego, bring it as a support set, bring it as a hazard stacker, do something of that sort with it. Don't bring it as an offensive mon to constantly kill your momentum as Danza gets a free switch into Steelix every single time. Like, even a burned Steelix was able to come in repeatedly on it. He falls hard for me this week. He sacked Lando to get up rocks early against a big threat like Jolteon, which ended up being a sack for Danza because he didn't even need it eventually. That really put him in the back. I didn't think to check the Sylvali type, as you mentioned. Just a lot of things that I felt he could have done very differently this game, and I hope that he adjusts because he does have one of the strongest teams, I feel. But often we see this Lando T Zard X core. People aren't able to utilize it super well. I feel like he could have brought Serp to this matchup. Superior would have been really good. Maybe a Glare Leaf Storm set with sub Leech Seed, something of the sort. I definitely feel like Nihilego could have stayed home this game and been subbed out for something else. Anything, really. Anything to deal with maybe Gallade, anything like that. But definitely Deeb's for me. Takes a huge fall this week. He drops 3 spots into my number 8. I think he's your number 9 right now, right?
Next up, like I said, we do have Aaron and his Calgary Infernapes, the other Calgary team, which did play substantially better. Now, you have him lower than I do. I have him at 7, which is still the bottom half. You have him at number 9, right? I think that Aaron, at first glance, he worried me that Bird built his team. I and others have felt the wrath of Bird. His team building is a little suspect sometimes, and I didn't quite trust it, but I am glad to be delightfully proven wrong. Aaron did a really good job, and a seamless job for that matter, setting up Trick Room with Bronzong, and then of course dying to the burn damage, which did of course maximize the set and strategy in tandem with the Haruyama. I really liked his Hydreigon set. It was extremely effective in both whittling down and KOing the Melodic and the Mega Venusaur, even if it didn't quite do both. That was the intention, and it worked. Also, the Haruyama and Hydreigon really opened up the doors for Aaron's actual offense, being the Mega Kangaskhan and Thundurus, which is what he tried to do week 1 against Randy, but didn't really have the matchup to do so. Whereas this week, that's exactly what happened. Haruyama broke things, Hydreigon stopped walls, and then in the long game, Kangaskhan and Thundurus really did put in heavy, heavy pressure and damage to the vast majority of Goldoa's team. So, in other words, the long game that he played, even the short game strats that Aaron imposed, they worked, and Bird did a good job building for him this week. I hope it's not a trend, but it worked, and I'm glad to see it.
Yeah, no, for sure. The Haruyama breaking things early, like you said, really set him up. I think he played the game. He paced it in a way to where he could get the win, and that's exactly what he did. He seemed a lot more solid this game, even in his commentary. The Hydreigon set was super nice. I loved it. He played his Haruyama very well. Like I said, there's not much more that he could have done here. He only stays low for me, or a little bit lower, because of who he beat, essentially.
Okay.
Because that's how I base my rankings. A lot of the time is are you beating people that we consider strong in this league? And if you're not, then you're not moving up a lot. If you are, then we're going to reconsider and move you up a lot harder, right? So that's it for me, but I need to keep seeing this from Aaron. I think that, especially now having Clefable on his team, I think that he's going to do a lot better moving forward, as long as he can capitalize on this offense. Really uses his utility the way that he did this week. The Trick Rooms, the Taunts, the Encores that he has access to now, the Thunder Waves from Thundurus, all of this great utility that he has going on with his team. So long as he can bypass the speed barrier that he has, he'll be fine.
See, I understand what you're saying. I feel like if he actually uses this, then platforming it up into like a middle ground ranking and then moving up higher would be better than keeping him low and drastically moving him all the way up, which is a nothing issue to the audience, just more our point.
Yeah, I guess, but I don't have a problem with that personally.
Fair enough. I guess bigger numbers, so it looks better. All right, yep. I'm gonna let you start off on the Exeter City Chief Electivires. Whoops, I don't know why I keep saying that. Because I have a lot to say.
Melon disappointed me in this game, I'm not going to lie. A lot of things really I did not enjoy hearing in his commentary. The way that he was caught off guard by a lot of things. The Zoroark disguised as the Zygarde. The coverage that Leo's perfect Zoroark had, honestly, just completely threw him for a loop. Not subbing turn 1 with the Zygarde. I understand that like Miltank can go for an ice move on that turn, but still you don't want to catch a Toxic on your Zygarde when it's such an important cornerstone to your team, and that's obviously one of Miltank's options. If it has an ice move, then it probably doesn't have a rock move as a result, and it can't hit the Zard on the switch, so that would have opened the door there. A lot of things. He didn't anticipate coverage on anything, like at all. And not having max happiness on the Lax as well hurt. I feel like EQ could have carried him through, though. I just feel like he let everything get whittled, everything get toxic. He had no counterplay to the knockoff from Zoroark, which lost him his berry. There were just so many things. As far as prep goes, it wasn't horrible, but it could have been better. As far as play goes, he just got completely demolished. Luckily, he brought it back to a 3-0, but for me, he has to drop a little bit this week. He's dropping 2 spots for me. I know he took a bigger fall on your list.
Yeah, he did. All right, I have such a litany of issues that you may have said already, but it mostly starts out with the fact that you have a sub Zysnek right off the bat. And what do? Not click sub with it. You basically, Leo's Miltank did the job of Zygarde that you were trying to do.
Yep.
What is up with that? And then not only that, but then he used Magearna, which you say in your video is not a threat. What did it do? Got 3 kills, pretty much like did chip damage and knocked out the Gengar and cleaned up late game and showed off that Snorlax could not beat it. Like, you want to talk about something that you completely undermine and then lose to it. It'd be different if you won and showed that Magearna wasn't a threat, but instead you let it do pretty much anything. Let Leo do pretty much anything he wanted. Yeah. The happiness on Lax, personally, for anyone who doesn't know, is one of my biggest pet peeves from an analyst perspective. Now, granted, I will never draft Mega Lopunny, Mega Pinsir, or Snorlax because of the fact that I hate the game as it is, that I don't want to have to spend another 20-30 minutes every week trying to get the happiness up, and assuming I forget 1 week, well, I don't want to be that guy, then take something that I criticize other people for and have it come right back at me.
Then Tom, just run Facade and get 4 kills with your Mega Lopunny. What are you doing?
Or run Cosmic Power. I don't know.
We're gonna mess with each other this season.
Yeah, we are. Just more things. He let Gengar die for no reason. He let Spiritomb die for no reason. He didn't see the taunt or the HP Rock. Now, granted, that was just Leo's really good prep. He let a lot of things just get fooled and didn't set up rocks for the 2nd week in a row, and that pretty much ensured that Zoroark came in and fooled him. Like, it's such a litany of things that he said that, it just kind of came back and bit him right on the ass, in the ass, near the ass, everywhere. I don't know what to say, frankly, about how to improve. I don't know what to say about how to have him do better. Just do fucking better. I don't know.
Fingers crossed.
Right.
That's all I can say.
The one thing I did say that was funny is, what if his Snorlax's berry becomes like Hayden's Gliscor's Toxic Orb from Season 4? Where every week it just gets knocked off. Whether he needs it or not, like, it just gets knocked off, and it's like, fuck, it happened again.
That's when you start running Rocky Helmet.
Right? But the saving grace, I guess, is that Lax ended up getting to +1, lived the close combat, and basically chewed away 2 differential points that he should have lost. That's it.
Yeah.
Now that we're done with my 2 big rants of the week, we're going to go into my number 6 and your number 7, Randy and his Texas Rangers. Now, he did sort of take a tumble, me 3 spots, you 4 spots. Basically, he got my Melon treatment on your side that I gave him. Right, okay, that makes sense. So basically, here's the thing with Randy. I'm not going to move him down as much as you did because, well, 1 spot is not that much, but I think that he played well, honestly, against someone who just played better. The same way that Turbo played better than Jellison. You know, the match can go either way. I like the fact that he did prep and see Toxic Darmanitan coming, so he didn't bring in Jellison immediately like he did last season, or that he also saw it out last season when it was the same strat. I think Daniki had Jellison, or vice versa. Something like that. The Adamant Lop, it's amazing how much that thing just busts in, you know, other Pokemon. I'm sure you're aware of it because you got to use it this past season for the GBA main. Mm-hmm. But I really don't have much like negative things to say about Randy. He played well. CJ played better. He was riled a bit by the Banded Darmanitan, which pretty much fucked his Uxie into like next Sunday. The Scarf Toxic Terrakion pretty much I think sealed the game for CJ, but Randy, while he was a little bit bummed by it, he definitely thought that's what that was the turning point. And then of course Sub Calm Mind Suicune just set up and won once the Jellison was toxic, and he ran for it. So while he doesn't need to fix up major things, he just needs to kind of like forget this, move on, and catch a W next week.
See, my problem with Randy is not necessarily his play, because as I was observing him last season when we were in the same season, he seemed very solid as a player and he was keeping up with everybody. Now that I'm actually analyzing and looking at his games properly, I'm starting to see, and this was even a problem against me, I would say, when we faced off in week 10 last season, or week 9, the very last week, and I never uploaded my game, so I didn't actually get to say this, but Randy seems to have an issue with not being able to identify what completely stops Mons on his team. And for against me, it was Crest stopping his Hawlucha last season. This time around, it's Suicune shuts down Jellicent if it has Substitute. So why are you leaving Jellicent for last on the team? I know that Suicune is a hard mon to deal with, but you have an Adamant Lopunny. You have a Celesteela, which can potentially break Sub, as we saw it had Bloom do. So it was definitely able to break Sub consistently. Has a Rotom Heat, which outspeeds if he beat correctly. He's got a Mamoswine, which puts in a lot of offensive pressure. So I don't see why Suicune should be left for that late in the game to be dealt with as an issue, because Suicune is one of the best Pokemon in Draft League format. I'll say that right now. It's one of the most difficult Pokemon to deal with.
Get out of here.
So, I'm 100% serious. It's an incredible. It's a goat. All right, it's the goat. And I hope that Randy doesn't have this issue moving forward, that he really is, in his building, is able to identify what puts a complete dead stop to his stuff. I like that he brought Grass Move on Celesteela. That was a good bring. That's something that you should be bringing for Suicune. And it also hits the Terrakion simultaneously. I just feel like leaving the Jellicent for last when CJ clearly has a direct counter to it still alive, probably not the best idea. So that's something that I want to see Randy clean up. But other than that, he still played very well. Randy doesn't ever really play badly. I don't have recollection of him having bad games necessarily.
See, you see Suicune as a goat. What if it's more like a cat? You know?
I think it's a dog. You know?
But Raikou
Pretty
is a
sure
cat.
it's a dog. Why a cat?
Sabretooth, tiger, cat.
Oh yeah, that's Raikou.
No. I think cat. Anyway, we're gonna go.
Moving on. Next up at we have the same, almost the same top 5. This is really nice, and we have the same bottom 3. So it's really just in the middle that we're kind of indecisive between each other.
I just like ranting. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. My number 5 is, and Tom's number 5 is the Los Angeles Nido-Kings. We have Danza coming in here. Despite knowing very little about Glisspod, or however he chooses to pronounce it.
Glisspod.
Yeah, it's Glisspod, Danza, if you're listening. He was able to completely outplay Deeb, as we mentioned earlier, never really letting him gain a turn of momentum. Switching into Torn hard on Glisspod was really, really risky, and that could have costed him. But it was a solid read on the first impression play. I'm glad that he looked up that Glisspod got first impression and what it was. So that was a really good play on his part. Obviously, the priority move was coming out that turn because Jolteon was in. Keeping Steelix healthy for the Nihilego, seeing it as a threat and bringing it this game. Just very solid prep and play from Danza, honestly. I have no problem whatsoever with the way that he presented himself in this game, with the way that he prepped and the way that he played. And the only reason that he's at number 5 is honestly because he's 1-1.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, catching an L to Leo week 1 is not something to really be all that discouraged about.
Exactly.
I mean, I have like 3 things to say. The Quick Feet Jolteon, while it's more of a pseudo-antiquated set at this point because it has been shown to work in different aspects, it was used and set up perfectly by Danza, and of course would have bypassed any sort of Porygon 2 shit. I fell for that once against someone. I forgot who. It was this past season, but you know.
Mono?
No, Mono didn't have P2. Someone did, and I didn't fall for it. Just I pulled a me, and I was bad. Also, I like that he definitely sniffed out the Rotom Hex Willow set, and here's the thing about Danza's Torn. Just run Air Slash or HP Bird, dude. Like, it's... I pretty much... I'm going to, like, run a running tally as to how many Hurricanes he misses per week. Like, 1 or 2 each week. And it's going to be upwards of, like, 14 by the end of the season. Right? But, hey, the nice thing is that Torn T is still... It has that nuke button with Hurricane. Z Hurricane. So that's cool for one good use. And I guess the final thing is that he didn't really have much to worry about when Deeb's Glycopod was constantly chipped down by rocks, Zardex was pressured, and Neoligo sucked away all the momentum from Deeb's side every time they came in. And Danza, of course, did his very good job himself in pressuring Deeb's offense. The Glycopod forced itself out with emergency exit. Zard couldn't really set up against the Savali water, and of course was affected by hazards, and Neoligo was just a trash set this week. So good job by Danza, and I expect him to be in this area, if not move up, as he continues to trudge forward. And honestly, catch more W's, because I think the week 1 loss to Leo, it was a fluke, and he's going to prove himself more and more. From there, we have the only coach that, if he didn't lose week 1, then he would have never lost. And that's going to be Turbo and his Phoenix Midnights. So... I know, you're allowed to cringe, all of you, at these jokes I'm making every single week, but I will make these jokes because he's the only coach that gets copyright claimed by a coach who doesn't matter. Alright, so, we have the only coach that matters, Turbo and his Phoenix Midnights. I really like the the Belly Drum Sap Sipper Citrus Azumarill, which was devastatingly good in this matchup. And it's funny how, like, both teams kind of set it in their team builders, and it ended up actually working. Now, I will say this. I feel like Jellicent wasn't in an impossible situation, because if you think about most of the covers that Virizion can run, you have Stone Edge and Zen Headbutt, both of which would have been neutral against the Azumarill, but I assume that Turbo had the coverage to ensure that thing wasn't going to get 2 KO'd, or if it was locked into that, he wasn't bringing it in, period. Then, of course, you had Close Combat, not very effective, Exeter, not very effective, and the Leaf Blade, which, obviously, as we saw, was what allowed him to get up to +6 with the Belly Drum. It was perfect, and the set worked perfectly as he sought out in the team builder. He continues to play intelligently, aggressively, with his Mega Arrow and other mons on his team, and applied effective pressure to his opponent's walls, checks, and everything in between. I like how, I'm seeing Turbo, while he's in dangerous situations, like late game, he still comes out with a nice W, and you know what? If he didn't lose week 1, he would have never lost so far in the D-League. And that's the most upsetting part, that I can't make that joke every single fucking week.
That's for sure. Yeah, no. Turbo, for me, he played solidly. Obviously, switching to Arrow on a potential Stone Edge, maybe not the best idea. I understand the play. While I don't necessarily completely agree with it, Nidoking did look okay. Obviously, it could check Virizion, it could check the Registeel to a certain extent. I'm not sure that I would have necessarily let my Nidoking go down either, but taking the damage on Arrow really opened the door to Virizion to come in, which in turn opened the door to Turbo to set up with his Azumarill, obviously, which absolutely went in on OP's team. I really, really like that set. That was really impressive from him to bring that Azu, anticipating a Virizion that could not touch the Azumarill whatsoever. Very solid. There's one thing that I want to hit on with Turbo, though, that I kind of question his reasoning for. If you're so sure and so convinced that the Kyurem is Salic, then on the final turn, when it subs itself out of 25% range or into under 25% range, you should be superpowering that turn and not rock sliding. Because if the rock slide missed, then he was done. The game was over.
Yeah.
So I really, unless it was a 50% berry, which is extremely unlikely in that situation, because why would you start subbing in the first place? Just take yourself down to 25% after with the Jirachi's Iron Head or whatever. But if you're so convinced that it's Salic Berry, then I think 100% you need to click Superpower, because he was panicked in his commentary that if the Rock Slide didn't hit, he lost. And, well, yeah, obviously, but you also didn't click the super effective move that doesn't miss. So just be careful with that. Other than that, he played super solidly. He brought all the right sets, and he did super well this week, so I'm glad to move him up. Moving into our number 3s, we have the Baltimore O'Reilly's CJ, who's been playing exceptionally well this season thus far. It's only been 2 weeks, but I really liked his prep. The Darmanitan was great. The Suicune was perfect. Honestly, he just brought the right Suicune to take full advantage of that Jellicent that he knew was coming. The double Toxic from Darm and Terrakion as well. The way that he played his Terrak, the way that he played his Klefki as well, constantly forcing in the Rotom Heat, which he knew was coming in every single time, just to get in his Lottie as a result. I don't have a lot to say about CJ. Like, until he shows me that he's not able to play a certain matchup correctly or bring the right Mons, I can't critique him.
Yeah, I think that this was certainly a statement game for CJ. He pretty much showed that while he is, a little bit unknown in terms of being a coach, because, like, let's be honest, I mean, he's in lesser leagues, not lesser as in, like, lower skill, like less visibility. No, exactly, right? Yeah. UBC, he's done really well in. I think he's in PMC something. It's something like that.
Mostly the UBC though. That's right. Where he's really big in. Yeah.
So while he's been in those leagues and doesn't have the same visibility as other coaches, this was definitely a match that kind of shows like, hey, I'm here to prove myself. I'm here to win, and let me show you how. I definitely did like that he was effectively able to pressure Randy's walls, being Uxie and Jellicent. One with Darmanitan, fucking it into next Tuesday, and then Jellicent, which he toxiced with the Scarf Terrakion, which I think honestly was what sealed the game in CJ's favor, because then that effectively allowed Suicune to set up and sub up versus the Jellicent later on, and even protecting, which I know was unintentional, but it lessened the damage from the Z Seed Bomb, and basically did, I think, less damage than an actual Seed Bomb would have done to Suicune.
Way less.
Yeah, right? So that was cool. He just played, like, extremely well. The Draco gamble, the KO Mamoswine, that was cool, and even then he had a contingency plan to knock out Mamoswine had the Latios went down. But the one thing I want to say, that this was something that's a little bit more like inside baseball, he broke the cycle early game by knocking out Mamoswine, because this was the cycle that was sort of establishing. Keys came in, Randy was able to get into Rotom Heat, whether CJ defogged or play roughed or whatever, right? Which then allowed him to Volt Switch out on Keys regardless of what CJ switched out into, which more times than not was Latios, which then got in Mamoswine, then threatened CJ with an Ice or Ground or some sort of double, some sort of addiction.
Forces back in Keys and restart
right,
the cycle.
So at some point, I like that CJ basically took the initiative and ensured that he was able to, get rid of the Mamoswine after 2 rounds of Life Orb damage. That was really cool. I hope to see this sort of innovation, this really, next level thinking from CJ as we move forward throughout the D-League, because honestly, like, this was my favorite match of the week. I'm not really sure I had a favorite match of the week for last week, obviously, but can I say week one more time? Let me see if I can. And, it was just fun to watch. That's it. It was 2 really good people going against each other. It was a really good match, and as we move forward, I think both these are going to be playoff teams, and I hope to be right. Now we're going to go into my number 2, your number 1, the Durham Dragons. I don't have much to say.
We're starting on Leo again. Can we start on Zazo this week?
But, like, fine. Zazo didn't upload. Yeah, go Zazo.
Yeah, I think that's better to knock that one out first, because we don't actually have a game to base ourselves off of other than Greg's. We only really saw Greg's side, but from what Zazo brought, how he played, I really think it's pretty straightforward. There was I didn't see anything gimmicky. Everything was really laid out. I guess the Go-Goat in the early game was really the only gimmick, which he let go down pretty early. Zazo could have gotten caught by a counter, and that might have been pretty bad for him, as we mentioned earlier with the Scizor setting up in the late game potentially. I don't know if his Ferrothorn had HP Fire or not. I don't know if we saw the full set. But effectively, if it didn't, then Scizor would have won with the way that he got off a ton of damage on the Zapdos. I want him to be a little bit more careful with that. Shuka counter definitely could have caught him, but other than that, like I said, everything was really, really straightforward. There's not much to say. We can't really move him. I have him at number 2 again because he hasn't shown me as prominent of a win as Leo has just yet. But they do face off against each other next
That they do. Yeah.
So we'll see what happens there.
You're right. Go Growth was interesting. I just don't understand why he went for Growth after he saw Ice Beam do 50% with from Greninja.
No, he went for Growth on the turn that Greg went for the first Ice Beam. Same turn.
Oh, okay, I see. So yeah, but that's the thing. Like, was he expecting him to switch U-turn spikes? I don't know. It was a little weird.
Not have Ice Beam, not have Gunk Shot.
Fair.
One of the two.
I also have much to say. You know, the one thing that I liked though is that Zapdos in tandem with Pharaoh and Blissey, I feel like could be the new hotness in terms of getting up hazards and getting rid of hazards. I'm not going to talk about the thing specifically, but it's like Zapdos gets rid of the hazards, and then he brings in Pharaoh or Blissey, both of which don't really die, and they get the hazards back up. Very cool, a very niche combination that, while it may have been more spotlighted back in, you know, the pre-Z move days, it's cool to see it now. Just, you know, like you said, he did a good job late game by baiting and weakening Gliscor and Mega Scizor to ensure that he, you know, put up the W, and also he was padded 2 to 3 mons because Greg played like ass, so that's it.
Yep.
Finally, we have the Durham Dragons, which I know you... Good call, having this be last, since we actually have a game to judge this off of.
Yeah.
And, like you also said, I look forward to this match next week against Leo and Zazo. It's funny how the Miltank was a better Zysnek than the Zysnek was in terms of what it did and what it was supposed to do. You know, Toxicking 2 to 3 mons, and then of course getting its Toxic removed from the nice little tech that was really underrated in terms of putting Heal Bell on Magearna. I think that the way that Leo is using Zoroark, especially this week with the mix set, the burn didn't matter because Dark Pulse, and of course eventually the HP Rock and Taunt was really what shut down a lot of Melantosh's sets and really threw him for a loop. I mean, it beat Spiritomb, it beat the Mew, it beat Zard Y. Last thing I'm going to talk about is just the AV Ape. That was honestly one of the coolest things I've seen this week, besides like AV Weavile. 2 things I never would have expected to run Assault Vest, but they did, and it worked, and it was cool.
Yeah, physical Zard Y could have definitely destroyed Leo's entire game plan, but that's not what we saw, obviously. Leo Zoroark, fantastic. It's very rare you see such a perfect Zoroark set for a matchup. Like, you look at Melon's team, HP Rock for the Zard, and then it's got Taunt for the Snorlax, for the Spiritomb, and the Zygarde as well. It's got Dark Pulse on there, and it's got Knockoff for the Snorlax as well, which is amazing. And then he disguises it as the Zygarde, which forces a ton of switches. Brings Heal Bell on Magearna, which I did not see coming at all. I really thought that Miltank would be the Heal Beller, but he saved the move slot on Miltank to get Toxic on there, and instead put it on Magearna. Really, really solid. I forgot that he has 3 Clerics and not just 2. I think he's dropping Serena, I believe, after this week, if I'm not mistaken. I know that he was talking about it. But his team in general, fantastic. AV Ape, I also did not see coming. Obviously, Air Slash, or like I said, DD Zard Y could have taken care of that. A lot of fault goes to Melon for the way that this game played out. Obviously, it still ended up only being a 3-0, but Leo's prep was fantastic. There's nothing to knock him on here. He prepped and played great, and that's why I have him still up at number 1. Obviously, things can change next week. We'll see what happens between the 2 top teams and their match. Everybody else is probably going to shift a little bit as well, but yeah, that's it for Leo. I think that he had a great game.
Yeah, and I think that is it for our power rankings. This one might be a little bit long. As we move forward, there's going to be coaches who are going to do really well, and we're going to have maybe not a lot to say, maybe high praise, but there's going to be other coaches like in the middle, like you heard from me, that are going to get absolutely demolished. I hope that doesn't be the case, but it's fun content for you guys, and there will be jokes all the way through, especially from me. Anyway, that is the power rankings. Hope you guys enjoyed. Leave your comments down below as always. Let us know what you guys think your rankings are, and we like to read the comments. And until next week, we will see you guys for week 3 of the power ranking.
Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.